might as well get started. I have on one watch, it's 10 o'clock. The other is 1 minute to 10. So I guess we can
I got
start.
1 minute.
Okay, we can
Okay,
start.
we want Greenwich Mean Time here.
Okay. And on Mars.
1 minute. Yes, yes. Okay.
Oh, golly. Anyway, what I'm going to do, let me read the prayer, then I'll let David read what he usually brings. And then Michael, you'll have the floor. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Okay, David, you're on.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm sorry that I missed last week. I was at the Northeast Astronomy Forum in New York, and I was hoping to get on at 1 o'clock our time, but that was exactly the time my lecture was beginning, so I just couldn't do it. But I'm here today. Today I have a very short quotation for you, and it's from Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard, from Uplifting Discourses on Various Spirits, published in 1847. Six
David,
words.
you have to speak into your microphone. You talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Faith sees best in the dark. That is, turns out that is President Biden's favorite quotation, and it's one of mine as well. I thought I'd share that with you. Thank you.
Okay. Michael?
Okay, Marty, thank you so much. I was really glued and concerned with what I was seeing with the colleges and universities around the nation. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. I just couldn't figure it out. And I started to think about it further. And then I realized that it actually does make sense to what these people are doing. What they want to do, and of course, this is my own supposition, but what they're trying to do is to cover up and ultimately erase what happened on October 7th, 2023, to divert all the attention away from what Hamas did. And this is probably the best way they know how to do it. And they're very good at it. Because then I thought further, well, the former president of Iran, Ahmadinejad, he put together a summit with a number of nations for the subject and discussion of the Holocaust of the 1930s never happened. So this, in my opinion, was all orchestrated from Iran. And the speakers at these colleges were probably tutored by Iran, the organizers, because those are the only ones that speak. And now, and this can go on for decades, because of what's happening now, of course, in Gaza, and so this whole thing is orchestrated, and they pick the colleges because the young kids in colleges, they're easily persuaded, and Iran and their employees, the Iran employees are Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis. These are simply employees of Iran, including the organizers on the colleges. And so I decided I wanted to mention this, and I thank you, Marty, for letting me say this.
Okay, you're welcome. If there are no comments, then we can proceed with our reading. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free, just raise your hand. Okay, Well, what we're going to do, we are currently in the book of Leviticus. We are on chapter, what is it, 24?
Verse 10.
Verse, and that's right. Thank you, Gail.
You're welcome.
Chapter 24, verse 10. Hold on. Shabbat shalom.
This is better.
Yeah.
We can only see your knees if you're.
No, we can see them.
We
Okay.
want you mid-screen.
It's up to you.
Consider either
No, I'm
place.
thinking-
It's,
I don't care, because I'm old. That's why I really.
So, once the rabbi is settled in, we can get started with our reading. And, Beth, do you have,
Or I can read.
please?
And the son of an Israelitish woman, whose father was an Egyptian, went out among the children of Israel. And the son of the Israelitish woman and a man of Israel strove together in the camp. And the son of the, I'm just going to say Israeli because it's easier. And the son of the Israeli woman blasphemed the name with a capital N and cursed, and they brought him unto Moses. And his mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri of the tribe of Dan. And they put him in ward, that it might be declared unto them at the mouth of the Lord.
Okay. Now, as usual, I ask, any questions or comments?
Not yet.
Well, okay.
Well, give me a second. I'm just reading the,
Okay.
I'm just
Well, while
reading
you're
what,
doing that,
yeah.
while you're doing that, I'm going to ask a question about this. Why does this come after all of the commandments that have begun to be stated by the Lord? And if you go by verses 1 through 9, and depicting all of the loaves of bread that we discussed last week, and we spoke about why there are 12 loaves, and or at least what we think, or that we think the loaves represent, and that we went through all of this, and all of a sudden there's a shift in thought to somebody who uses the Lord's name in vain. Lord's name in vain. So why do you think it's there? For those of you who like to read ahead, okay, it goes into more details about everything, about what they have done. So that's the first question I'm going to raise. That's not in your book.
Please. Well, there's something else that you didn't mention
Okay, go ahead.
that has to be mentioned that probably did occur, but we sort of glossed over it. But why is it relevant that this was the son of an Israelite woman and an Egyptian? Okay, which is a little bit, by today's standards, a little bit politically incorrect, but that's not mentioning. It's looking at the issue of those who were actually fully members of the community, and some that maybe aren't exactly. Okay, so this is like many things in the Torah and also in the Talmud. It's not necessarily written like a legal codex. Okay, where here, okay, this is the list of the laws pertaining to this laws. Some of it is a little bit chronological, like, you know, you'll get a mass of, you know, laws.
Mhm.
Right.
Then you'll get a story. Okay, that is not totally irrelevant, you know, there could be some chronological connection or a subject, connection by subject. But in this, I guess it's a little bit of both, because the subject, you know, they're talking about ritual, how important ritual is, okay? And one of the aspects of ritual, performance of ritual correctly is also how not to perform ritual incorrectly. And it's something that can happen during the course of either performance of ritual or just daily life is what might be considered as blasphemy, okay? Or you know, not really proper respect to the name of God.
The only thing I think is a little interesting is that they say that he is the son of an Egyptian man
And an Israelite woman.
and an Israelite woman. And it's almost, I mean, it kind of glares at me and says, that's what you should be paying attention to.
Right.
Yeah, it's,
But that's
Yeah,
what I think.
that-
I said that.
right, yeah,
And I
exactly,
said that we sort of went
but it
over it.
really, yeah,
If he weren't the son of an Israelite woman,
right,
he wouldn't be considered an Israelite at
Right,
all.
right.
Okay, he is kind of, but
But not
also
really.
kind of not, you know, so.
Well, not necessarily at this time
right,
in the biblical history.
They weren't going by,
No, they went
Maternal?
Right.
went by paternal.
paternal instead of maternal.
Right.
so he's altogether not.
Yeah,
Israelite.
yeah, it's, I mean, there's one of the Eitz Chaim has a translation of that, the half Israelite.
Mhm,
Oh,
Okay.
that's in here.
Yeah,
right.
but I don't see anything in the Hebrew that would give that.
Hmm.
So we learn. No, there's not, so. You know, that's an editorial, that's an editorial addition by this editor.
But it
But it's-
was still,
right.
it was still blasphemy because he is the son
right,
of an Israelite woman.
Right.
Anyway. You know, because it says.
But as was said, is the question, if he was a quote unquote full Israelite,
right.
would it have still been the issue?
Okay.
So therefore, I think the answer to your opening question, Marty, is this leading into a discussion of who is a true Israelite and subject to the mitzvot and the prescriptions and proscriptions?
Or,
Or is this just the more of a determination of what constitutes blasphemy? And what is the consequence for that?
Okay. It's all, I think it's also several things. I think it's a comment on the several things that are expected of us. If we look at the laws from in Exodus and all the way through what we've read in Leviticus, and it is honoring your parents. And in the process of honoring, you are going to change the modality of your thinking if you have parents of two backgrounds. Which one is going to be the most important in your life? Which one is going to have the most influence? And who is going to teach you the most? are all, and these are the issues that I'm not going to give answers. All I'm going to do is raise the questions and say that in this type of situation, if someone is going to remain an Israelite and not turn out to be banished, we haven't gotten there yet with the punishment. But they have to have the proper teaching and influence. God can only do so much. It has to be reinforced by man. That's a responsibility we take on when we do the covenant. That when we get it freed, our parents pass this on to us. And so here you have a father who is, we don't know anything about the father other than he's Egyptian. But if he was saying, well, it isn't necessary to do this or that, if the wife went along with it, then she's straying. And that will influence the thinking of others if nothing is done. And if we take the name of here, some sort of blasphemy occurs, you know, and so as a result, he may have felt, as a result of the lack of proper teaching, that he could say it. And
Or didn't understand the
Right.
importance of it.
Right. And so maybe that's what it's getting after. Because what else happens with the house of, you know, the tribe of Dan later on?
Mary has her mother.
Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Shabbat Shalom. I think I think that this is as a what we call a mashal, which is like a like La Fontaine, a parable, in which, thank you, in which it says, you know, the story, the father is not one of us, but the person that did this bad deed has the same responsibilities as anyone else. He saved the same rights that anyone else. But here it shows that it's with a Mitzri, with an Egyptian. And there is in the Talmud, there are all kinds of ways of thinking. So he said, here is a parable, and alachat kama vechama. More, help me out.
How
of
much
course,
more so?
right. More so for someone that doesn't have that kind of background. So I think that this is just an example to show what needs to happen and what will happen if you do so and so, and the more so when the yiches is kosher, is Israeli and Israeli. My thinking.
Okay, Beth.
When we study these and we read it portion by portion, I really like that approach. But in this particular case, I actually think it's important to read this to the end, because if you'll excuse the pun, we're traveling down a really rocky road that includes stoning. And I think reading ahead on this one, it would benefit us to have the whole story and then go back and parse it in this particular case. I don't know. What does anybody else think?
I think so.
I'm always for reading more.
Okay,
I think Beth has a very good point.
no, that's why we're agreeing. Okay,
Yeah. And I
let-
voted for you, Beth.
then
Thank
let's
you.
read on. Well, Beth, where do you want to stop?
I
Go
would,
all the way to the end of 22?
yeah, I mean, it's not,
You want to go to the end of 23?
23 ends though.
I think going to the end of this section, which, yes, I would go to the end of 23 on this one because it is very much the sum of its parts.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Okay.
do you want,
let's
do you want-
read.
oh, okay. So I'm at 13. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, bring forth him that hath cursed without the camp, and let all that heard him lay their hands upon his head, and let all the congregation stone him. And thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel, saying, whosoever curses his God shall bear his sin, and he that blasphemes the name of the Lord, he shall surely be put to death. All the congregation shall certainly stone him, as well the stranger as the homeborn, when he blasphemes the name, shall be put to death. And he that smiteth any man mortally shall surely be put to death. And he that smites a beast mortally shall make it good, life for life. And if a man maim his neighbor as he hath done, so shall it be done to him. Breach for breach, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he hath maimed a man, so shall it be rendered unto him. And he that killeth a beast shall make it good, and he that killeth a man shall be put to death. Ye shall have one manner of law as well for the stranger as for the homeborn, for I am the Lord your God. And Moses spoke to the children of Israel, and they brought forth him that had cursed out of the camp, and stoned him with stones. And the children of Israel did as the Lord commanded Moses. Wow.
Okay, well, what did you want to say?
Well, what I wanted to say is, I think this has always been one of the hardest chapters, and that as so-called modern Jews, we have a tendency to make nice, to say, well, it's a parable. It doesn't really mean this, except it was written at a time when it did really mean it. And, there are cultures that still stone people. I did 24 windows for a palace in Saudi Arabia a long time ago. I was in my 30s. And during the time that my windows were being installed, I was told by the young man, an American that was from the design firm I was working with, that a woman was stoned to death for adultery. That they buried her in up to her waist in the sand, and people stood around and stoned her. I called the project Art for Barbarians. But we come from this culture that is to us, horrific. And so it's more a question of how do we take this and make it work for us today, especially with what's going on right now. And it's a question, not an answer.
Anyone try to attempt an answer?
Well,
Okay.
I don't
Well,
have answers.
It's not-
I just, I think there's a larger issue of religious zealotry. And what's the fine line between appropriate ritual observance, which is meaningful, and religious zealotry? And you know, throughout history, there's been walking that fine line, okay? And the Jews are not the only ones guilty of that, okay? Let's not forget the Spanish Inquisition, okay? Which is more religious zealotry, okay? And I think, you know, our modern sensibilities are, religion is meaningful, but religion can get out of hand. And unfortunately, sometimes spirituality and religion are sort of at odds. Real spirituality and religion sometimes at odds, even though religion is supposed to help us achieve spirituality. So our goal today is not to be religious zealots. Our goal today is to seek spirituality. We can look to Judaism to help us, but we want to avoid religious zealotry. And unfortunately, we're facing a war right now, which is based on religious zealotry. Okay, we have you know, a whole country that's promoting religious zealotry, absolute religious zealotry, and that, you know, it's legitimate. You know, what if Allah has commanded it? You know, people must die. You know, who are not adhering to Allah. So.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
please.
I studied ancient history. And this is the words for their time. It's the punishment for their time. And it's against all humans, not just Jewish people. So it's an even punishment. However, society has come a long way, thank goodness, since those days. But this is written in their time and their punishments and their thoughts and thinking.
Okay, yes, it was practiced by many groups, and that has been extended over the eons. You are
Absolutely.
correct.
They
And
couldn't have written it any other way.
But yeah, but the zealotry continues.
so was it, so how did it occur?
Anita wants to speak.
Grace. Okay,
Grace wants to speak.
Grace, go ahead. I don't see her up there. Oh, there she is.
I'm here somewhere in that screen, I believe. Anyway, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you for letting me interrupt. I'm looking at exactly verse 17 that kind of wraps it up thus far for me. Anyway, I don't know about the rest of you. It says, and I'm going to read it from the translation which I'm using. If anyone kills any human being, he shall be put to death. It's talking about ridiculous murdering of one another for any reason. And I think that is realistic today, is had been in the past. And for me, it kind of wraps up what is going on. When I was first hearing this morning, the first thing that I wrote down in my notes, big controversial with mixtures of cultural diversity. And that's all I have to share with you. I'm not well read at anything, but I love this class and coursework better than anything I've studied. So thank you for letting me share that.
Thank you. Any ideas as to whether or not this was practiced? Michael
Oh, Mary's got her hand.
and the Mary.
At 17, it says, if anyone kills any human being. I don't know if at this time it is elevated to murder, because as we know in the commandment, thou shalt not murder. So are they taking that into account in the Torah? How does that work? Because if anyone kills another human being, it depends what the circumstances would be. Is he killing to protect himself? Is he killing to protect someone else? So this is not clear. At least to me, it's not. If anyone kills, if anyone murders, it's two different things. Because as we know, to kill and to murder are different. Why does it, our Torah says, thou shalt not murder. In the non-Jewish version, it's thou shalt not kill. And thou shalt not murder is the correct, is absolutely the correct interpretation.
Okay,
That's
There were
yeah, that's it. In what Michael's referring to is the phrase in the Ten Commandments.
mhm.
But this is an entirely different phrase.
And it's a different word that's
Right,
being
yeah,
used,
this
yeah.
is, we would translate this as smite. You know, anyone, and which.
Or to
which-
hit, yeah.
Yeah, with to hit, but it's the implication is premeditated. You know, with cause, kind of thing.
Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, the name of the lady that sits on your left, Marty, what's her name?
Salam.
Salam.
Ceylon.
Ceylon, like
Ceylon.
the island. off India.
Bilang. Okay, to respond to your comment and the comment of who was there, well, let's start with that. And Steve, I agree with you. Zealotry, and probably a Jewish zealot and a Arab zealot or Muslim zealot have more in common than me and you. So the thing is this, there is a feeling, there is a quality or unquality that I believe that humans carry, and I thought I don't until I discovered that I did, and it's called revenge. It seems like that it's contained in us just like many others. And if we are aware of it, and if we don't, that's a problem. So the issue of revenge is recognized in the Torah. The issue maybe doesn't use the word. And for example, I want to say another thing. Now, the Torah recognized that feeling, and therefore they created, whoever wrote the Torah, created something that we have not encountered yet called Ir Miklat, a shelter city. And in the shelter city, those that were, if someone was killed and the family runs after them for revenge, they can go to these cities. There are several cities, and they can hold to what's called Karnot HaMizbeach. That's part of the altar. And the other person cannot touch him. So we see they acknowledge revenge, and they acknowledge that there is a way to get away from it, because even murder might be justified. Now, for, I think it was Gail, you know what, whenever people say, well, this was in the olden days, in history, yeah, it was. But you know what, we kept it. We kept it in the United States. If someone murders someone, he can get jail or. So do you think that hanging a person is more righteous than stoning them, or the electric chair, or the vaccination, the shot? It's not.
Lethal injection, that's what it's called.
Yeah,
it's
the
not a
lethal injection.
vaccination, it's a lethal
I know,
injection.
sweetie. Joke. The stats. So, we inherited all kinds of things. And for the people that are talking about today in Israel, as soon as October 7 came, the feeling of revenge that went across the border was awful. It wasn't just anger and disappointment. There was revenge that came to the surface. Okay, I just spoke enough.
Yes, Rabbi.
So, I just did a quick look. The same phrase that's used here in verse 17 that we kind of agree is a mistranslation of that someone who kills another, but or murders or smite or whatever or hits. It's the same verb that the Torah text uses to describe Moses striking the Egyptian taskmaster. Okay? Obviously,
Right,
Moses
right,
was not
right.
subject to capital punishment in the Israelite society, even though he had killed someone in this way or caused the death. The classical commentators do two things with this phrase and then also with the eye for an eye phrase. They say that mot yumat, the Hebrew of shall be put to death, that's a misreading. It's not that I'm going to say he or she is immediately put to death. It's not that it's immediate capital punishment. It's that is subject to punishment that could even include the death penalty. Okay, they expand it. And so that it might be, has to be brought to the elders, has to be brought to the community, put on trial, whatever it was, which might lead to acquittal and to be found innocent, but it also could lead to a death penalty. But there is a process as opposed to an immediate automatic death penalty.
Just curiosity, don't want to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but is that Talmudic or is that later commentary?
It's Talmudic and then expanded upon by the commentators. That's referred to as
So they're-
commentators. Yeah. I don't know what I think it's Mishnah, but I'm not really
That the Mishnah
sure.
was
I-
enlightened enough to
Yeah.
point that out.
Yeah,
Okay.
now, whether that indeed was the intent, I don't know. But that's how the Jewish society of the time decided to read it and interpret it, okay? And secondly, and Rabbi Miri was using the word parable, that when we talk about eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, the classic is that it's the value of, it's the monetary value of that what may have been lost or injured or whatever, as opposed to this one caused damage to my eye, therefore I can take a stick and gouge out his eye.
So it's monetary, not literal.
That's the way it was understood.
Yeah.
Once you get to the Middle Ages.
Okay.
Now, again, what was meant initially, and somebody even said, we don't even know if this was actually put into practice.
Right.
We just don't know. This is one, is this a real example, an illustration, or is this only a hypothetical? Okay, frequently when the Hebrew is v'ish ki, or ki nefesh chayachata, something like that. We're not really sure if it's case study or if it's presenting a hypothetical.
But maybe the really important thing is that what they're seeking is justice.
Okay,
They're trying to figure
Yeah.
out justice.
yes,
Justice as opposed to strict revenge.
Yes.
and
Right.
hold that thought and we'll repeat it in a little bit. Let's hear.
Like I'm gonna
Okay,
remember.
Rabbi Mary, Beth, and Michael.
What I wanted to say, and Rabbi Norm, help me out if I not saying it very clearly. In the Talmud, there is an issue of, and if you remember, if a boy or a girl, it's probably a boy, doesn't speak nicely to the parents and he doesn't behave nicely and so forth, his punishment is to stone him.
Right.
So in this place, which is, I don't know if it's halakha or agadah, but it's nice, is that they used to take them at the time that they were in Israel, not the modern one. They used to take that kid to the gates of the wall. And at that time was the Sanhedrin, like the high court, would come and make what here they said, decide that if he should be stoned or not. Now, the problem was that there were not walls and there was no gate. Therefore, they couldn't decide to stone him. So I think it's very nice, but it shows that some people didn't like this type of behavior.
Oh, yeah. And also they didn't, if they were all elders and probably one of them had a doctor's appointment at least once, so you couldn't collect them all together.
Right.
All the elders
Right.
had to be,
They had to be
Not only-
70.
the parents had to be
Not only,
totally old.
right, not only unanimous, but it also had to wait overnight. You could
Right.
never impose a death sentence on the same day.
Right.
Okay, there always had to be time to sleep on it. And think about it
That
overnight.
is carried in our laws today. Okay,
Yeah,
the
right.
sentence is read several weeks later. After the jurors, the jury has made its decision. In today's, but as the country was growing up, sometimes they would just go right outside,
Mhm.
but usually it was safe till the next day. The next morning. Okay, so it's just interesting. Beth, I think that you had your hand up and then Mike.
Yes, so if we back this up out of the physical smiting, and you back it up earlier into blaspheming, cursing, where the end product is still the same. If you're stoned, you're going to die. And so then, my thought process is, if, we talk about Lashon Hara, about not saying bad things about not gossiping about people. And of course, cursing God is a stronger approach. But what I hear is that saying really hurtful, hateful words here is equal to physically hurting somebody. That whichever one you do in this passage, there's going to be you're going to be put to death in one form or another, or you're going to be maimed for life. And so again, what do we do with that in modern day? How do we look at our actions in terms of the words that come out of our mouth, especially when we're angry, especially when we want revenge? The hateful signs that we're seeing against Jews now are what we would say in the vernacular, slap in the face. And again, because I look at Torah as how do I apply it to my life to make my life, better? What this says to me is that we have to look at our actions, starting with what's in our heart and then what comes out of our mouth. And basically we need, I think of it as a filter right here between my brain and my mouth. So sometimes I'll think something, but I won't say it to somebody because it's hurtful. And so we think about, something horrible happens and you think, oh, I could just kill that person. Except you don't, either because you're incapable or because you know it's the wrong thing to do. So that's why I wanted to look at this as a whole. But that's it.
You, okay. Michael,
Okay, what Beth was just talking about, so I want to respond to Beth and then say what I really originally wanted to say, if I may. There's a saying that, an American saying that says, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. But what Beth said, she makes a very good case, because words can rise to a level to be very, very hurtful. And since the human being is fragile, they may strike out. But in our laws, you can't do it. You just cannot do that. You can get very angry, but you can't physically act upon it. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about is Israel today, where I'm not sure if this is correct, but as I understand it, that in Israel, the death penalty is issued in certain cases, but it's not applied. It's done more of a stigma than anything, because do I understand that in Israel people are not put to death unless you're caught as
Except the Nazis, except the
I was going to
Nazis
say that.
and their helpers.
Nazi, right? I was
Yeah.
going to say that if you're caught, you're a Nazi and you've been looking for, that would be something different. But normally an Israeli who has been pronounced a murderer and put to trial and was as condemned as it's not applied, but it is because of he's given a stigma of that. That's my understanding.
It's important to emphasize, though, Michael, in Israel, even a terrorist does
Correct.
not receive the death penalty. There is no death penalty, except for the exception of Eichmann. There is
right.
no
Right, well,
death penalty.
well, I think it's written actually of genocide. Right, so if they had someone else,
Well,
most
that's
likely a Nazi who was convicted of crimes of genocide against the Jewish people, death penalty would be on the books. But so they have multiple life sentences, but not, for the terrorists.
Steve. This is my personal problem with what's Israel. They Jews seem to sugarcoat everything. They don't want to go beyond that. That's why you hear to use the word perish instead of murder. A terrorist is not put to death in Israel. It's about sugarcoating, and it doesn't serve the Jewish experience well. It gets the Jews in my opinion, it just gets them a lot of trouble, and then the anti-Semites can get their way because they know how to deal with Jews. That's my personal information, opinion on that.
okay, well, thank you for that. I think if we go back to the text, we're going to find something that's sort of, I think this is an intentional insertion into the Torah and into somebody made comment. Gail, would you repeat that, please?
Well, they're trying to figure out a system of justice.
Right. And this is the dilemma.
That's the wrestling point.
That's right.
There's a culture of revenge.
That's right. And it has to be, it's not so much revenge as the topic. It mentions it because it's the conflict that we have if we are going to even use the phrase, well, God told me it's okay to do this. Why would then God say in the very next breath, okay, you've got to stone these people, and then wait a minute, I'm making you premeditate the death of the victim who's going to be stoned to death, the criminal. Okay? Why would that be juxtaposed so closely? Because it is a dilemma. And what we've been doing here is that very discussion that's necessary in coming to conclusions with any crime, whether from a little theft all the way up to mass murder. It is very, very critical of us. It imposes upon us a tremendous responsibility that before we make any decision like this in haste, that it's well thought out. The same thing is going to come up in Leviticus when there's a way out of going to war and killing all of the Canaanites. It's going to be stated, I've been saying this, and we're going to be saying it, having this discussion again.
Where's Don when we need him?
I know, but it's very. We're going to see it with Pincus. And God says, wait a minute, we're not going to kill him. You know what I mean? He intervenes. Okay. How do you deal with zealotry? We're going to see it with a whole bunch of other issues. And I think it's my own take. And I think it's stated here intentionally that God may want us to do it, but maybe we're supposed to stop and think before we do it, because is there another way? Remember, the name of the blasphemer was stricken from Torah, and so was his father. Only the mother's name, who is an Israelite, that remains in Torah. But the name was stricken. That's as good as saying death. By doing that, the Egyptians did it long before the Israelites came on the scene. If somebody was no longer alive because of banishment from the community, the name was stricken from the records. But everything else went on smoothly. Nobody died, but in essence, he did die, or she died. So if that was the case, there's more to it. If somebody is banished from a community and stones are thrown as that person is leaving the community, another example, isn't that the same as killing the person if he's no longer a part of your community? He doesn't exist anymore.
It is.
Yeah, so maybe that's what they want us to, the authors wanted us to think about, or God wanted us to think about before we make these hasty decisions. And maybe that's why the judges on the Beit Din in Jerusalem, you know, in Tel Aviv at that time. They made that decision. Here and why the subsequent behavior was adjusted in Talmud and Mishnah and everything else, that it would make more sense. Because you just struck out the name. That person never existed. And that's as good as death. I'm sorry I took up so long and was too excited, but this discussion comes up again and again. And the conscientious objector is going to be addressed in the book of Leviticus when it comes to going to war.
Yeah.
So we have this, so this theme goes on.
There's a poem, and I'm pretty sure that it's contemporary, relatively modern Hebrew, but I can't come up with either the wording or the name of the poet or poetess, that does the image of the stones that are used in punishment, and agreeing with what you said, to obliterate someone's name, and the stones that we place on the grave marker to affirm that person's memory.
Right.
You know, making that,
Yeah.
making that connection, you know, and that
Very
distinction.
interesting.
All of a sudden, while you were speaking, I remembered that. I'll have to see if I can find it somewhere.
Interesting.
You know, something about Abanim Ha'el.
I'd like to ask a
Yeah.
question of the
Please.
rabbi.
Please.
Yeah.
When I was in Morocco,
Please speak up so they can hear.
When I was in Morocco, I went to the oldest Jewish cemetery, and not one single grave had a woman's name or death or anything. They were just empty. And the only graves that had names were men.
Interesting. I wondered, did it have the man's name and then the son of, like, you know, Abraham ben Yosef?
I
or
don't know, it
Yosef
was
ben-
in Hebrew.
Because some of the oldest cemetery, well, at least in the Ashkenazi, so I don't know about Morocco, is on the gravestone, they'll only list the mother's name.
Well,
and not the father's.
they didn't have any female name on anything.
Interesting,
And
yeah.
the men had a burial right next to them, sometimes 2 or 3. And it was women, and I was told it was a woman's grave. And even
Well,
little baby boys had their
Because
names.
because the man could have more than one
Mhm.
wife,
Yes.
so, right. Mhm.
So that didn't count wiping them off.
Interesting. Was that in just one cemetery or all?
That was only in the Jewish cemetery.
Okay. Okay, that's new. That's new. Okay. I had never
Oh,
heard that before, so
I found it interesting.
it is interesting. Any other comments on this? Well, why don't we're now going to go on to Leviticus 25, verse 1. Is
I think one of the lessons that we need to, whether we discuss it or just remind ourselves.
okay,
That is this overriding principle that the Ger Toshav, the resident alien, was subject to the same expectations, obligations,
Right.
and restrictions as the Israelites themselves.
mhm,
And therefore, you know, if you're going to derive the benefits of living amongst us, you're going to also be subject to the same punishments and restrictions.
okay. Good point. Very good point. Anything else? Okay, why don't we go on to Leviticus 25, verse 1. I don't see David there. Grace, would you care to read, or Gail?
Go ahead, Grace.
Grace is raising.
Yeah, go ahead, Grace.
She's muted.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Grace, you're muted.
I know. My computer won't let me touch it today. I have to use the mouse thingamajig. The
Huh.
trackpad. It's a finicky device. Oh my goodness. Thank you, everyone. Yes, you cleared up a lot for me, and it's beginning to get better. All right. The Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, when you enter the land that I assign to you, the land shall observe a Sabbath of the Lord. 6 years you may sow your field, and 6 years you may prune your vineyard and gather in the yield. But in the 7th year, the land shall have a Sabbath of complete rest. A Sabbath of the Lord, you shall not sow your field or prune your vineyard. You shall not reap the aftergrowth of your harvest or gather the grapes of your untrimmed vines. It shall be a year of complete rest for the land. You want me to continue or stop there?
Yes, go ahead, to the end of, verse 7.
Okay, I'm at verse 6 right now. But you
Right.
may eat whatever the land during its Sabbath will produce. You, your male and female slaves, the hired and bound laborers who live with you, and your cattle and the beasts in your land may eat all its yield.
Okay. Comments?
Rotating of crops.
Okay, yes. Well, it's the land is to lie fallow.
Yes.
Okay.
Like giving it a breath of, so that it can recuperate from all of its yield.
Hey, any comments about that? Well, okay, then I'll ask some questions.
The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof.
There you go.
Nice.
All right, we're just tenants on the land.
But, so why does the land require a Sabbath? Is the land alive, like the beasts and the plants?
Yes.
Expand
You
on
know
that.
what? Do you know the name of the town where I live? Anybody?
No,
No.
Wheatland.
Oh.
okay,
So the land of wheat. And we have 3 seasons. And I see that every so often there'll be a wheat field left completely alone where they won't plant, plow, or produce. And I have an uncle, he passed away, God rest his soul, that would make one area dormant of his land while another one would be a crop for yield, and even change the type of crop he would put in the area where he had laid dormant for a year. In the next season that he wanted to plant there, he would plant a different type of crop. So it's just, I'm wondering, I really don't know, but I'm wondering if that is just gives the earth time to replenish itself and allow the animals to, pull out the weeds or whatever, because goats will eat anything. I've had pet goats. I'm just, speculating here. And that's my only thought at the moment. So thank you.
thank you, Grace, that's very important material there. Amy?
Yeah, in agriculture, in scientific agriculture, they agreed that the
Excuse me?
land needs to rest.
Okay, just hold your thought for a second. Amy, and then Rabbi Mary.
When one plants crops year after year after year, it strips the land of the soil of all of its nutrients. And there needs to be a time for those to be replenished through the resting of the soil, the fruit and the plants that decay, and refertilize, replenish the soil. So you have better quality of crops. There's just so much that the soil can give you without it itself being replenished. And it's the same thing for people. We need a day of rest as well, because we use up so many of our own resources.
Okay.
If you could help me to do this.
Okay, but.
Go ahead.
Rabbi Mary,
What did you want?
Well, I just want to reiterate what has been said. Yeah, it has been proven that that kind of system is very beneficial. So it's done like Grace said, regardless of what the Torah is saying about it. And then there is also the Yovel, which is 50 years, whatever. But yeah, and it's done. What people usually do is that you plant today, and then tomorrow you plant again. I mean, so you rotate which is the field that has the crop, because people cannot live without crop.
okay, Steve had a comment and then Michael.
Yeah, that there is actually, and this is from the herd, so I'm gonna read it all.
Please.
Okay, because it's an interesting comment, that the fact that you're not working the land, we are very focused on the agricultural aspects of this. But it actually goes beyond the agricultural aspects, okay? And here's what's being said here, okay? In Deuteronomy 21, we learn that the seventh year was furthermore to be utilized for national educational ends, and special measures were to be taken to acquaint the men and the women, the children, as well as the resident aliens, with the teachings and duties of the Torah. Josephus rightly claims that while the best knowledge of olden times was usually treated as a secret doctrine and confined to the few, it was the glory of Moses that he made it current coin, to place within the reach of the English worker once in every 7 years, a year's course at a university in science and law and literature and theology would be something like the modern equivalent for one of the advantages which the Sabbath year offered to the ancient Hebrews. And this is a quote that he made from Verinder in My Neighbor's Landmark, okay, for that was published in 1911. But it's citing that this actually goes beyond the agriculture, the science and the agronomics, of, okay, let's let the land rest, but it was also releasing the people from all their agricultural pursuits and allowing them to pursue education pursuits as well. And
Very good. Okay. Michael, I think you had, first,
No.
okay,
I had my hand up.
okay, then you're next. Okay,
You said Stephen, then Michael. Anyway, I'm comparing this, if you will, to life and death. The plants, everything that grows has life. They grow. If it's not, it's dead. And so when you continue to work the land and don't give it a rest, the land would die and no more crops will be grown from it. So maybe a little odd for me to say it, but that's how I see it.
okay, it's a good point you made.
Thank you.
So now I'm gonna go back to my original, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, I mean, I'm certainly not familiar with all the agriculture and all the necessities, but then there's the overlay of adding an ethical imperative on top of it. Okay, So not only does the land need to rest so that it will be more fertile, et cetera, but it's an opportunity for us to share the produce with those who are in need.
Right.
And, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Okay. Now I'm gonna go back to my original question. Is and that is, was the earth being considered alive?
Sure.
Like, just like the animals and plants?
Of course.
Okay. Is there evidence to say that the earth is alive? Did you grow up with that thought?
Well,
Or was it a thing? Go ahead.
everything in nature lives and then dies. I can't think of anything that doesn't die. But you have to be alive in order to die. So yes, of course, the cycle is the same.
How old were you, how old were you when you became aware of the earth being a living thing?
When the plant that I planted in my dad's garden died. I was gonna help him, I was little. He gave me some seeds to plant and some grew and some just didn't thrive. So yes,
So you thought the earth was alive, not, but what about, I would have said, well, the plant's alive, but the earth gives nourishment. Does that make it alive?
well, everything.
Yes,
Of course,
That's why we refer to it as Mother Earth.
thank you.
Okay. So, no, but does nourishment alone make it a mother?
I'm not following you there, sorry.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Do you need any other qualities, though, to say it's a living mother?
yes.
Oh,
Okay, what are the other qualities?
They have to grow. They have to eat and the other side and not move, and they have to reproduce themselves. So according to these ones, it's not exactly, but we know that it has a need to revive itself because there are living things inside the earth, and they have to renovate themselves as well. If all the worms die, well, the fishermen, no, that's affect the earth. But what I want to say is in the Torah and in the Tanakh, we use the earth a lot as parables. And I'll quote a couple. First of all, we're saying, you know, when Moshe sends the spies to Israel, to the land of Israel, and they come back, the first ones, and says, this is an Eretz Ochelet Yoshvea. It's a land that devours the people that lives there. I always like that sentence because when atrocities are in Israel, somehow that sentence comes to me. The other one is Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash. It's a land that produces honey and milk and so forth. And so the talking about the earth is very common as a parable of something that happens. With Korach, the earth opened up and swallowed everyone. So we have here, you know, we have the agriculture piece, but we have also the literary use of land.
Okay, yes.
following up on the same, all of the phrases that Rabbi Miri's talking about for Eretz, but also sometimes the land is referred to as Adamah, which,
Mhm.
and Adam
Right.
is Adam, is humanity. So the connection there also, from dust we come and to dust we shall return. So
Right.
if we're living by definition and we come to from something that's living, we return to that which is living.
Okay, thank you. Suzanne,
It also strikes me that God is trying to also this I think is secondary, but to teach people to plan ahead, since he said that that they could not harvest anything that grows on its own in that seventh year. That means they're going to have to set aside grain
Right.
or well, I don't think they can set aside grapes because it'll spoil, but I guess they could make extra wine perhaps. So they're gonna have to plan ahead so they have plenty of food to eat during that year.
okay,
That's good point. People have to help God.
very. Yes, Beth, please.
I think especially after that last passage, chapter that we read, this is a delicious invocation to stewardship of ourselves, of others, and of the land. And the idea that we consciously take care of each other, we take care of the land that feeds us, and we take care of ourselves in this, sort of extension of Shabbat. Although Shabbat is much more inward because of all the things that we don't do on Shabbat. I remember as a kid, when you asked the question about when did we realize that the land was a living thing, we lived with my maternal bubby till I was 10, and she was an avid flower gardener. And she also designed clothes, so she was always overdressed for the job. And she had very long fingernails that were always varnished. And she would use those long fingernails when we were in the garden. She would pick up a worm in the fingernails and say to me as a little kid, "These are important. These help the plants grow." And then she'd put the wriggling worm back into the dirt. But yeah, I think this is a particularly beautiful chapter.
Okay, yes, Gail.
I was just thinking of it. It's a matter of justice for the earth. And if we neglect the justice for the earth or nature, however you want to define it, it's to our detriment. You abuse people, that's injustice. You abuse the land, you're gonna pay. And we are, unfortunately.
So I think that this is all well stated. By the way, are you aware that if you use all kinds of terminology in medicine and or biology, because not only with humans but animals and plants, the words may change, but the mechanisms are the same, and the same thing occurs with regard to the earth. For example, you have a water cycle, a carbon cycle, an oxygen cycle. You have, just for starters. And even when we talk about replenishing, to use the word, our bodies replenish themselves in biochemically and also physically, layers of cells, and you get new growth to keep us preserved. Same thing happens on the earth with the planet, only it takes a longer period of time. So basically science is supporting what we're talking about with that type of approach. So maybe looking at the earth as a living entity. Okay? May change our way of thinking about not just people, plants, and animals, but everything else on the planet, including the oceans, the sky, and so forth. And as we now know from the space program, and this is, so far, this is the only place where we can exist.
The beats coming up on here.
David, is your hand up? Yes.
He's
Oh,
muted.
David, you're muted.
I am muted. Is this better?
Yes.
Yeah, anyway, there is a biblical reference for the water cycle. If you want something that goes all the way back to them to describe the water cycle, and that comes from Ecclesiastes. And it says, all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is never full. Back the waters go into the clouds to fall again. And I think that's a very beautiful expression of the water cycle.
Yes, it is.
I learned that from my geology professor of all people when I was in Acadia years ago. I've always respected that.
So so now let's get to Earth Day.
Thank you.
Okay, Gail,
I've
could
been
you say
waiting.
something, please?
No, I was going to ask everyone, and it's really not. Did any of you celebrate Earth Day in any particular way? Or did you even know that it existed, or that it was this last Monday?
It was the 20th.
Yeah, that would come on the same day as Passover, but. No, nobody.
No, but this gives more meaning to Earth Day.
I think I celebrate that one every day, Gail.
Well, I actually did celebrate this year, so. And I'm not bragging,
What did you do?
I sent out cards to people.
Mhm.
Oh,
And I gave them cards that said Happy Earth Day to the children over at La Posada that are in the the school over there.
okay.
I sent over 50 bookmarks, and they were planting trees, and the kids were planting flowers in pots, and so, yeah. It was
Yeah.
fun.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank
Thank you.
Also, yeah, just what occurs to me is, of course, traditional Judaism is very disparaging of paganism.
Mhm.
And, what's preserved at what's presumed to be idolatry, but we can see that, there's a certain logic to it and value to it, because the traditional, and it wasn't just one culture, it was many cultures viewed the earth as a mother goddess.
Right.
Okay, and it does seem to be a bit on the fringes of Judaism. Of course, there are always cultural influences, foreign culture influences within Judaism, that if you look hard enough, you can see them. Okay, and sometimes the rabbis get a little excited about it and say this is idolatry, or this is not Judaism, leave it. But there was one for example, one process which you might see as sort of a little bit of an infiltration of a little bit of paganism. What we do on the high holy days when we do Tashlich,
Mhm.
and we sort of recognize the power of the flowing water and in cleansing from the flowing water, and seeing the flowing water.
Mikvah, how about the mikvah?
So just, I don't know if this is some aspect of the discussion that we could, but it's interesting that there are cultural influences within Judaism, that it's not, an inherent core concept of, you know, biblical or original Judaism, but that there are important things that sometimes we can learn from other cultures, and sometimes those practices get sort of find themselves in some way, you know, practiced in Judaism.
I think they were trying probably to avoid pantheism,
Correct.
so that kind of a thing. But you could still be a tree hugger and be a Jew, I think.
Or a swimmer.
But especially when you
I
raise
just,
is earth alive.
Stephen,
Oh,
You know,
yes.
what I would like to say, and please don't develop this too much, and then I'll let you know. The issue of land, not earth, but land, becomes an issue of war. For some people, a piece of land is more important than anything else. And for that, people are going to fight. And I'm not going to specify who. You can go to from Serbia to Ukraine, to another beautiful land that's in my heart. So
Well, for that matter, access to water
yes.
Yes.
is the same.
well, you know what? It's not about the water. It's about the holiness. And the issue of holiness, I received this from God, therefore I'm going to fight for it. I have a problem, but as I said, please, it's just my association.
Okay. Now, there was someone who got excommunicated because of this discussion. Is pantheism?
Baruch.
That's right, the Spinoza.
Oh,
And but as I've mentioned before, it may be reasonable to look at that book because his philosophy fits into current day philosophy, common philosophy, let's put it that way, a way of life today. But you don't want to worship, you don't want to make these all the earth an idol. You don't want to
Exactly.
don't want to make the tree an idol since it came up, or your dog or your cat an idol.
No,
You may idolize it in one way, but you don't want to make it into pray to it.
but you need to respect it.
Yes,
Or the sky.
Respect it.
yes. So, I would recommend rereading for some of you, or picking up some bits and pieces from Spinoza, who tried to use mathematics to also come up with his argument.
I would ask that if you're somewhat enlightened by Spinoza, and some of us are not, if you could share Spinoza with us, or if that's too radical for this.
Nothing's too radical.
It's been a while since I've read Spinoza, but it is worthwhile. I'll do some more. I can't tell you where he lived or anything, not off the top of my head. But it is, Gail is Googling it, so
Right,
that'll help.
yeah.
But was it?
It was Holland, yeah, it's not right,
Yeah, because that was one of the refuges.
Right.
Refuges
After
for the
That's right.
Anussim.
But he has interesting contemporaries too.
Oh, yeah.
Other philosophers
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
and you can see, as was mentioned, the cross-reference, you pick up from one culture, one philosopher, and another philosopher, and you can see the influence going both ways. So it's just been interesting.
But that's how the Sephardic
Yeah.
community of
Right.
Amsterdam got built. It wasn't just, it wasn't, some of it was Anussim, was people who had converted to Judaism,
Mhm.
not to Christianity,
Right.
but wanted to come back.
Yeah.
Because they're
The whole Spanish Portuguese.
Right.
Yeah, Spanish Portuguese community.
That part I did. Okay, any other discussion? I'm sorry I took us off on a tangent, but I just feel you know, you can read lots of books about different things in science, but there is an application. You suddenly realize, hey, wait a minute, we're it. If we don't take care of what we have, we're gonna really suffer the consequences.
Yeah, not-
So, and we're seeing some of it today. Any other comments? If not, who hasn't read, who would like to read?
Oh, wait,
David?
can I just?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so, take this for what it's worth, but this is a commentary, in Eitz Chaim, okay, to verse 6,
Mhm.
right?
Very good.
Okay. That you may eat whatever the land during its Sabbath may produce. Sometimes the wealthy don't believe that poor people are actually suffering, suspecting that they are just too lazy to provide for themselves. So let the wealthy undergo the experience of not knowing whether there will be enough to eat, and their attitudes will change.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
That's right, that's the you, okay, all right.
So I think that it's a very interesting comment also. Excellent. That is a very good point. So we're now going to go ahead. If somebody would care to read verses 8 through 17.
No,
I'll be happy to read that.
Okay, please, David.
Okay, 8, verse 8. Let me see if I can get to it. 25, verse 8.
no glasses.
We lost it.
Leviticus 25, verse 8.
And let them make me a missionary.
No,
That I,
wrong chapter.
No.
that's the wrong chapter. Wrong chapter. You'll have to stone me.
We're in
What
the
happened?
book of Leviticus, chapter 25, verse 8.
Okay, so let's see where we are here. Here we go. And
Okay, is there someone, while David's trying to find the correct, Beth, please?
And thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years. And there shall be unto thee the days of 7 Sabbaths of years, even 49 years. So that sounds like a math problem.
Simple, but it's a bad.
Yeah. Then shalt thou make proclamation with the blast of the horn on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall ye make proclamation with the horn throughout all your land. And ye shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land until all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. You want me to stop there?
Just go ahead through the end of verse 17. We'll
Okay.
stop at that point.
A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you, yet ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself in it, nor gather the grapes in it of the undressed vines. For it is a jubilee, it shall be holy unto you, ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. In this year of jubilee ye shall return every man unto his possession. And if thou sell aught unto thy neighbor, or buy thy neighbor's or buy of thy neighbor's hand, ye shall not wrong one another. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, thou shalt buy of thy neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the crops, he shall sell unto thee. According to the multitude of the years, thou shalt increase the price thereof. And according to the fewness of the years, thou shalt diminish the price of it. For the number of crops doth he sell unto thee. And ye shall not wrong one another, but thou shalt fear thy God, for I am the Lord your God.
Comments?
I
Go ahead.
just,
Go ahead.
you know what occurred to me is that perhaps what they're really saying, if you have to go back to the original ownership, is you really don't own the land. God owns the land. And you're just leasing it, renting it.
Mhm.
Maybe that's really what the concept is. It's just saying, God is saying, belongs to me, not you.
Okay,
Plus it prevents poverty, economics there too, but.
I think that's very important. We do not own the land. By the way, that's not only Jewish, but
Right.
you read that or hear that in many other tribal
Oh, yeah,
cultures.
not original.
That's right. Any other comments? Yes, Rabbi Mary.
Well, this issue became very controversial and problematic, and Norm is going to remind me the word of the Rambam that Isbullah, that
The pros
he
move,
that's it.
yeah.
Because if you see, when the 50-year come, they have to dismiss everyone. So people started playing games into, okay, I'm going to do this close to the 50s because it's going to be 1 year and then I'm going to go out. So the issue of counting was kind of, I don't know if he abolished it or commented on it. I think it was an abolishment on the usage of the Yovel to let everyone go. Reb Norm, please.
Yeah, I mean, the debate already begins back with Hillel. And then it's, finally codified by Rambam Maimonides. But, so what Miri is saying is that, if you won't be able to either make a loan or make a business transaction in year 40 because it'll all be canceled, 2 years later. So no one will loan any money, no one will do this, no one will sell you a house, and da, da, da. So there had to be some kind of loophole. I guess that's the best translation of Prose Bull. It's like a loophole, a legal fiction by which they could make sure that transaction, and they base a lot of it on some of the extra the explanations and the examples that are given here, but that's what she's referring to.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
So
Yeah.
there's the theoretical and there's the practical. Yeah, it's very nice to talk about the 50th year, everyone goes free and all debts are canceled and whatever, but wait a minute, if I need a loan in year 48, no one's going to loan me money knowing that it's going to be that the debt will be automatically canceled. So therefore we have to, for commercial purposes and transactions, we have to make sure that there's a way to do it.
Thank you.
Well, with regard to the land, you're buying the land. Are you buying the land, or are you buying the ability to produce something on that land?
You're buying use of the
land. Right.
Access to.
So if you're going to have it for 7 years, okay, and the land lays fallow for that year, you still have the right to do it, but in a Jubilee year. So several questions come up. So who starts the counting? When does that counting begin?
From the last.
Good question.
From the last. From the
Good
last.
Who made
question.
the decision we start today? You know, when did it start? The counting
I'm
process.
not sure when officially, when officially it started, but there is the record by which the entire Jewish community around the world does follow.
So when is our next Jubilee year?
There was a Jubilee year, maybe 3-4 years ago, something like that. It was within the last 7 years, there was a Yovel. That much I can speak confidently. I don't remember exactly which year.
Was it followed?
By
The Orthodox.
by many people.
By many
Oh,
people.
sure,
Okay.
sure.
So,
You know, I mean, so the religious kibbutzim, for example, although
Yeah.
they have made other, you know, in ascertaining which fields will be used for what, and those counting, but the overriding Jubilee year, yeah, that affected everything.
so everybody does it. It doesn't mean, or could it mean, that when you start the process, let's say, instead of counting and from an exact point in time, it's from the time you start. Does the entire community have to do this?
Well, it's the entire community. I think that it depended who was the authority at that time. I mean, if we're talking at the time of the high priest, probably it came from there. Okay, take the shofarot, blow the shofar, now we're starting. And probably it went on to Sanhedrin, and now probably the government and, you know, Bibi, I don't know, but, you know, but it's an authority that needs to decree.
Okay. Any other comments? Is it?
Well,
I remain troubled here only because that I can see issues arising. The Jubilee is coming up, and I'm going to pay you to farm it, pay you the money that I would have, that you would have made for those 7 years. Is that what it means?
I don't know.
In other words, or the right to grow things. Am I going to pay you for 48, if I buy it at the beginning, you were successful and you had this is how much you were able to produce, and let's say it was $100, okay? But if it were 25 years of use, do I just pay you $50? Because I get confused with the wording here, and that's why I
negotiate.
So
Yeah.
you get,
You know, I want to emphasize
you're-
something, Marty, and this regards only to Eretz Israel. When the people were in the diaspora, they could do whatever they wanted with the land. That didn't count. So it's something that has to do with the land, to the growing, to bringing to the temple, you know, so we have a long period of time that these things were not happening. They are happening now, and I recall that when I went to Mea Shearim, the very religious place, a friend of mine lived in the border of that, and there were places that sold vegetables, and they decreed that it's not from that time. Probably bought it from the Arabs in the country, but it was very clear, but it was only in Israel. And I believe that all the laws of land, of growing on crop, so forth, are from there. And that includes why we have in America 2 days of Pesach, because it was from here the decree came.
That's one of the distinctions in the law, in the halakha, between Eretz and Adamah. If the law is
Right.
about that, the Eretz, the land, that specifically means Eretz Yisrael, as opposed to a
Right.
generic earth.
Yeah.
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 In Plout, Rabbi Plout has an interesting little comment on things. I just would like for you to bear with me for a second. All of this, however, was reserved for Jews to find a practical means of realizing the ideals of the biblical document. That's what we were talking about. But in 1897,
Zionist Congress?
yes.
Yeah.
Professor Herman Shapira proposed to the Zionist Congress that a Jewish national fund be established for the acquisition of land in Palestine, to be operated on the principles in the spirit of this chapter.
Oh.
The proposal was finally adopted in 1901 after Shapira's death. The JNF collected funds from Jews all over the world and began to purchase land, which became the inalienable property of the Jewish people. These lands were then made available for settlement by individuals and communes and for use, but not for profit. Tenants may remain on the soil as long as they cultivate it properly, but they may not sell or mortgage their holdings. The fund has reclaimed much desert and swampland and has provided sites for public buildings and industrial development. Thus, a substantial fraction of the real estate of Israel was withdrawn from the speculative market. Social utility was put ahead of individual aggrandizement. By its insistence on soil conservation and proper management, the JNF was among the earliest agencies to deal seriously with the protection of natural resources. Okay.
Marty, I would like to remind us, at one point, Abraham wants some land and he buys it. And I don't remember who it was that said, no, you don't have to buy, I'm giving it to you. And Abraham insists in buying it. So we have that kind of interaction. I need to leave a little earlier, but I don't want to leave before we read verse 23. But the land shall not be sold permanently, because the land is mine, because you are aliens and visitors with me.
It's God's, it's not ours.
That's right. It's very explicit. That's right. Did you want to make any other comment about it, Rabbi?
No, I think that we have that kind of declaration that every Native American is going to tell you that, I mean, I don't understand how you want to buy a piece of land. That land doesn't belong to me or to you. Or it's not for sale. It's probably like selling your neshama. Not for sale, unless, if you get something like in the story. And at this point, I want to say Shabbat Shalom, and you enlightened my Shabbat. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom.
Have a good week, Rabbi.
I need to go back and just remind us that back with I should know the verse number, with verse 10, okay, of how the Jubilee year is to be sanctified, and proclaim liberty, release, this says release, but proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof, is a reminder that the American founders believed so strongly in the Bible, in the biblical tradition, and took every opportunity that they could to throw in these kind of quotes, and verses, even if they took it out of context. And whatever. There indeed, if you didn't know it, there indeed was the proposal that Hebrew should be the language of this country. Rather than English, yeah.
Whose
Yeah.
proposal was it?
At the time, Constitutional Convention and all that kind of stuff. It obviously wasn't a majority opinion.
Because back at that time, an educated man
Yes.
Right.
knew Hebrew. They only knew Latin,
Absolutely.
Greek, and Hebrew.
Absolutely, and the Puritan tradition and whatever, yeah.
Fascinating.
So I have a question. If God gave us the land, and I'm speaking just about Israel. God gave us the land and we abuse the land, are you actually abusing God?
Mm.
He gave it, that's a
Well,
gift. You're abusing a gift.
classically, the answer would be clearly no, because otherwise that would be saying that the land is God, as opposed to the land belongs to God.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
all right.
so they would, it's maybe a little bit of a wordplay,
Mm,
but that's how that they would respond.
oh, okay, all right. But again, though, God gave us life, God gave us the earth creation. So if it's a gift, someone gives you something and you abuse the gift, you're abusing the giver, aren't you? Question, I don't.
I don't know if abuse is the
Well,
is
misuse?
well, no, I mean, when you say abuse the giver,
No,
yeah, it's because God would, again, classically, they would say, well, God has the right to take it back,
yes,
right?
true.
Even so far as not only the land, but our very lives.
True.
And that was demonstrated, so.
I see a hand up, Grace.
Good eyesight, thank you.
Really big.
I'm just wondering if this word might be more reasonable for something we were just speaking about, instead of abusing this privilege and calling the land God. How about the idea that God wants us to respect his planet Earth?
Okay, so you're showing disrespect to God rather than,
Yeah,
okay, all right,
okay, sure,
you go along with that? That sounds reasonable.
sure.
So long as it's not blasphemy and we don't get stoned.
Oh, there's that.
Any other comments?
Beth. That's
I think all of this is about, I think all of this is about stewardship.
Yeah.
That if we,
Good word.
if we recognize our ephemeral, that our bodies are the thing that carries around the neshama, the earth that we till that feeds us is going to outlast us, but while we are in partnership with everything that God has provided us, that we are supposed to nurture it, nurture each other, nurture the land, be good stewards.
Mhm.
Okay,
Okay,
yes, Steve.
no, it's just, I'm seeing the word, I'm hearing the word steward and stewardship a lot. And I can't, I'm a recently retired doctor, so I can't, distance myself totally from medicine. But that is now a term that has entered medicine quite prevalently,
Really?
specifically pertaining to the use of antibiotics. We talk, that's a very, very common phrase used, is stewardship pertaining to the use of antibiotics, because as you know, and I'll just explain a little bit more, okay? That it's because, it wasn't that remote past that antibiotics were perceived as super duper wonder drugs.
Gonna cure
And they actually said, like, when tetracycline, or the predecessor of tetracycline, first came out, they said, start your patient who has a viral illness on this right away to prevent the illness from progressing. It was used a lot. That sort of permeated the practice. And people got used to the idea that I'm a little bit sick, I have a little bit of a fever, they have to give me an antibiotic injection right away.
Have a cold.
Okay, not being a racist here, but that's still practiced a lot in Mexico, okay? I was right on the border, a lot of our patients sort of went back and forth. That was a little bit of a practice, because it was expected, on the part of the patients. Very gradually, I remember, like, as recent as the 80s, I would have patients walk out of my office in anger because I didn't give them an antibiotic, even though I tried as best I could to explain that it was a viral illness, and we checked the child out thoroughly, and the child is going to be okay. And if you're seeing something else, I'm available. No, so it's just very interesting. I find it interesting that we use that term, stewardship, and that stewardship has specifically, so stewardship pertains to a lot of things. We have, it's not only natural resources, but it's technology that we have to be careful of.
Before you go away from medicine, so what is it that you're doing that by not giving the antibiotic that pertains to stewardship?
Because
that needs to be
well,
explained.
I didn't quite
I know.
get along enough to explain that, but because if you abuse it, it'll be the same result as abusing the land. You get superbugs, and the antibiotics don't work, and it's a disaster. So people have to look beyond the immediate. Our immediate, if we're not being stewards with the environment, the immediate impulse is to utilize and to utilize and to utilize. That it's there, it'll never end. No, it will end, and it'll result in disaster. So it's the same thing with the antibiotics. You think, what harm can it be? My child is going to get the antibiotics, the fever will go down, the child is cured. What's wrong with that? Well, if that becomes your general practice, the antibiotics are going to end up worthless.
Well, and
ultimately.
Antibiotics have been abused in animals too.
Yes.
They crowd the animals together in these feedlots, and they inject them all with that, and then you get, some horrible carryover into people from that, and it's just, it's endless. And with fertilizers in fields too. They're spraying the crops for bugs or, some bacterial something or, and it's just, it's overused, and then it doesn't work. And then you have to build stronger ones.
The elephant in the room is not the antibiotics. It's not the fertilizer. It's size of population, and nobody addresses that ever.
There's
Size of population?
With the population,
there's too many of
there
us.
are too many people.
There's too many of us.
And that's an elephant that nobody wants to discuss because of the ramifications of it.
Can I just
Yeah.
make one comment? take it for what it's worth.
Sure.
In the fundraising world,
Yes.
stewardship refers to maintaining your relationship with the donor. Okay, simply put,
Okay.
saying thank you.
I
Okay, acknowledging and maintaining the relationship, but saying thank you. And that definitely relates to.
And not
where-
killing the goose that lays the golden
Well,
eggs.
by extension.
Hence, hence all the prayers of gratitude.
That's it. Right, exactly.
Yes, Michael.
Muted.
Michael, you're muted.
Michael.
You're muted, Michael.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Yes, the word steward, the stewardship is really a very, very interesting word. It goes along also with respect, because one could be a good steward over one's own life and what they do, how you take care of yourself. I kind of look at it in that light as well as everything that has been said.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments? Well, with that, I have nothing else to add for today. We're going to go back. We sort of, Rabbi Mary sort of jumped to the end, but I'm going to go back just to pick up on a few pointers that we skipped over. You know, we really didn't finish that whole chapter.
Right.
So, but we'll come back, but we won't go into this discussion again. Well, we may not, we may. We may do it.
Never.
That's right.
Amy, it's nice to see you.
Yes.
She's muted, but-
She's, it's okay. Anyway, everyone, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
And see
Shabbat
you.
shalom.
Shabbat
Have a
shalom.
good, healthy